On a busy flight, a man demanded Michelle Obama be removed from her seat, unaware of the consequences. She didn't argue or raise her voice, she made one call. What happened next left everyone shocked and proved that grace and strength can turn any injustice into change. Stay until the end to see how it all unfolded. The hum of the airplane cabin filled the air as passengers shuffled to their seats, stowing bags and settling in for the flight. Among them was Michelle Obama, traveling quietly and dressed simply in a casual sweater and jeans. With her hair pulled back and a pair of sunglasses resting on her face, she hoped to enjoy a peaceful journey without drawing attention to herself. This trip wasn't about appearances or publicity, it was a rare moment of solitude. As Michelle found her seat, placing her carry-on in the overhead compartment, she noticed a few glances from nearby passengers. Most smiled politely, likely recognizing her but choosing not to disturb her. She appreciated the quiet respect. She adjusted her seatbelt and opened a book, ready to settle in for the flight. But peace wouldn't come so easily. Across the aisle, a middle-aged man sat stiffly in his seat, his sharp gaze fixed on Michelle. His body language radiated discomfort, arms crossed tightly, lips pursed, and a scowl etched across his face. "She doesn't belong here," he muttered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Michelle froze for a moment, her fingers resting on the edge of her book. Though she didn't look up, she felt the weight of the man's words settle over her. It wasn't the first time she had heard such things. She had faced similar moments before, moments where her mere presence seemed to provoke unwarranted hostility. The passengers around her exchanged uneasy glances, some whispering softly, unsure of what to do. The man continued to mutter under his breath, his tone dripping with entitlement and resentment. Michelle took a deep breath, keeping her composure. She reminded herself of the lessons her parents had taught her, to rise above pettiness, to stay calm in the face of hostility. "Never let them see you flinch," her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Determined to maintain her dignity, she adjusted her book and pretended not to notice the man's behavior. But the air in the cabin had grown heavy with tension. What had started as a peaceful flight now felt like a stage for something much bigger. And as the murmurs around her grew, Michelle realized that the man wasn't done. Trouble was brewing, and she knew she would need to face it head-on. The flight was moments away from takeoff when the murmurs turned into a confrontation. The middle-aged man, who had been glaring at Michelle Obama since she took her seat, suddenly stood up. His face was flushed with anger, and his body language screamed entitlement. Passengers glanced up from their phones and conversations, sensing something brewing. "This is unacceptable," the man announced loudly, gesturing toward Michelle. "She shouldn't be here. I paid for this seat, and I won't have my flight ruined by this." The cabin fell silent, the hum of the engines now the only sound. The passengers around Michelle shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their unease palpable. Some stole glances at her, recognizing her and clearly confused by the man's behavior. Others avoided eye contact altogether, unwilling to get involved. Michelle, seated calmly, didn't flinch. She looked up briefly, meeting the man's angry gaze with quiet strength before returning her focus to the book in her lap. She had encountered this kind of hostility before. Years of navigating public life as a black woman had taught her the value of composure, even when faced with blatant disrespect. The man, growing bolder with the lack of immediate action, marched down the aisle to find a flight attendant. He waved his arms dramatically, his voice growing louder as he demanded action. "I need you to move her," he said, his tone dripping with authority. "Put her in another seat, or better yet, take her off this plane entirely. I won't sit here and put up with this nonsense." The young flight attendant hesitated, clearly caught between her duty to maintain order and the irrational demands of an irate passenger. "Sir," she began carefully, "all passengers have been assigned their seats fairly. I assure you, everything is in order." The man wasn't interested in her explanation. "I don't care," he snapped. I'm paying for a comfortable flight, and I don't want to sit near her. Do something. The flight attendant glanced toward Michelle, who remained composed despite the growing tension. She approached Michelle cautiously, her expression apologetic. "Ma'am," she whispered, "I'm so sorry for this situation. Is there anything we can do to make you more comfortable?" Michelle offered a faint smile, her voice calm and steady. "I'm fine right here," she said firmly. "I have a ticket for this seat, and I'm not going anywhere." The words were simple, but they carried a quiet power. Michelle's refusal to engage in the man's hostility was not a sign of weakness but of immense strength. She had learned long ago that grace under pressure speaks louder than any outburst ever could. The man, however, wasn't done. He stomped back to his seat, muttering loudly enough for everyone to hear. "This is ridiculous. People like her think they can do whatever they want." Michelle tightened her grip on her armrest but kept her expression neutral. She wasn't just thinking about herself, she was thinking about everyone who had ever been made to feel small, unwelcome, or less than. This wasn't just about her, it was about a larger fight for dignity and respect. The murmurs among the passengers grew louder, some whispering words of support, while others avoided the escalating tension altogether. The flight attendant returned to the man, trying again to calm him down, but he dismissed her with a wave of his hand. As the situation continued to spiral, Michelle made a decision. Quietly, she reached for her phone. She wasn't going to argue or raise her voice. Instead, she would act strategically, using the power she had earned over years of leadership and resilience. One call, she thought. That's all it would take. As the tension in the cabin grew heavier, Michelle Obama reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Her movements were deliberate and calm, the complete opposite of the chaos surrounding her. The man, still fuming, crossed his arms and glared at her, muttering under his breath. Passengers nearby glanced curiously, unsure of what was happening but sensing that something significant was about to unfold. Michelle unlocked her phone and scrolled through her contacts, her expression unreadable. Years of experience had taught her the importance of staying composed, even when faced with blatant hostility. She wasn't about to let this man's behavior define the situation, or let it slide without action. The man, noticing her phone, smirked. "What are you going to do? Call someone to complain? That's not going to fix anything. You should just leave already." Michelle ignored him, not even sparing him a glance. She selected a number and pressed the call button, lifting the phone to her ear. Her voice, steady and calm, broke the tense silence in the cabin. "Hi, this is Michelle Obama," she began, her tone professional yet firm. "I'm on flight 1453, and there's a situation that needs immediate attention." Passengers leaned in slightly, their curiosity piqued. Who was she calling? What kind of situation was she addressing? Even the man, who had been so full of bluster moments ago, hesitated. He furrowed his brow, suddenly unsure of what to make of the calm confidence radiating from her. Michelle continued, her words precise and purposeful. "There's a passenger creating a hostile environment and attempting to have me removed from this flight. It's unacceptable, and I need this addressed immediately." On the other end of the line, the person she had called responded with urgency. Michelle's demeanor softened slightly, though her determination remained clear. "Thank you," she said simply before ending the call and placing her phone back in her bag. The man let out a derisive laugh, his bravado returning. "Who'd you call? Your friends? That's not going to change anything," he scoffed, his voice dripping with mockery. For the first time, Michelle turned to face him directly. Her gaze was steady, her eyes unwavering as she spoke. "You've said enough," she said quietly, but her words carried a weight that silenced the man instantly. The passengers around them exchanged glances, some visibly impressed by her composure. The cabin fell into a tense hush, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Minutes passed like hours. The man began to shift uncomfortably in his seat, his confidence waning as he realized Michelle's call might carry more weight than he had expected. Then, a voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain speaking. We've been informed of a situation in the cabin that requires immediate attention. Please remain seated as we address the matter." The man's face flushed red as uniformed airline officials stepped into the cabin moments later, their expressions stern. They scanned the rows before stopping near Michelle and the man. "Miss Obama," one of them said respectfully, "are you all right?" Michelle nodded, her calm composure never faltering. The man, on the other hand, froze as the officials turned to him. "Sir, your behavior has created a disturbance on this flight," one of them stated firmly. "We're asking you to leave the aircraft immediately." The man's jaw dropped, his indignation bubbling to the surface. "You've got to be kidding me," he shouted. But it was clear his time was up. Michelle didn't say another word. She didn't need to. Her quiet strength had set everything in motion, and justice was now unfolding before everyone's eyes. As the flight continued without further incident, Michelle Obama remained calm, but her mind was racing. This wasn't the first time she had faced such hostility, but she was determined to ensure it would be the last, at least for anyone else in a similar position. This wasn't just about her, it was about standing up against the larger issue of discrimination and entitlement that so many endured silently. When the plane landed, Michelle exited quietly, her composed demeanor masking the resolve building within her. She retrieved her phone and made another call, this time to a trusted advisor who had handled complex public matters in the past. "This needs to be addressed," she said firmly. "Not just for me, but for everyone who has ever faced this kind of treatment." Within hours, the incident began to ripple beyond the confines of the flight. A few passengers had recorded parts of the confrontation and shared them online, and the footage quickly went viral. Social media erupted with outrage as people recognized Michelle Obama and saw how the man had targeted her. Comments poured in, condemning his behavior and praising Michelle's grace under pressure. "He picked the wrong person to mess with," one tweet read. "Michelle Obama is a symbol of strength and dignity, and she handled this with absolute class." As the story gained traction, the airline released a formal statement. "We deeply regret the events that occurred on Flight 1453 involving Mrs. Obama," the statement read. "No passenger should ever feel unsafe or unwelcome on our flights. We are conducting a thorough review of this incident and implementing immediate changes to ensure such behavior is addressed more decisively in the future." The airline also announced new policies, including mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for all employees, as well as clearer protocols for handling disruptive passengers. They promised to work with advocacy groups to improve their practices and create a safer environment for all travelers. Meanwhile, the man at the center of the incident began facing his own consequences. As his identity was revealed, his employer, a prominent corporation, was flooded with complaints. Within days, they issued a statement condemning his actions and announcing his termination. "We hold our employees to the highest standards of conduct, both in and out of the workplace," the company said. "The behavior displayed on Flight 1453 does not align with our values, and this individual is no longer employed with us." For Michelle, these outcomes were a step in the right direction, but she knew more needed to be done. She penned an open letter that was shared widely across social media, calling for broader accountability in public spaces. "This incident is a reminder that discrimination, in any form, cannot be tolerated," she wrote. "We must continue to challenge biases and create systems that protect everyone, regardless of race, gender, or background. Together, we can do better." The letter sparked conversations worldwide, inspiring others to share their own experiences and advocate for change. Michelle's actions had turned a moment of personal injustice into a catalyst for broader awareness and reform. By the end of the week, Michelle reflected on what had happened, her resolve stronger than ever. While the man's actions had been appalling, they had also ignited a movement, proof that even in the face of adversity, change was possible when met with courage and determination. In the days following the incident, Michelle Obama took the opportunity to reflect on the events that had unfolded. What began as a moment of personal hostility had grown into a public reckoning with deeper issues of racism, entitlement, and the need for accountability. Michelle knew that her experience was not unique, it was one faced by countless others who lacked the platform to make their voices heard. Standing at a podium before a packed audience at an event for racial equality and justice, Michelle shared her story with her characteristic grace and poise. The room was silent, the weight of her words settling over everyone as she recounted the confrontation, the man's entitlement, and her decision to respond with composure rather than conflict. "This wasn't just about one man's ignorance," she began, her voice calm yet commanding. "This was about a system that allows biases to go unchecked, that permits hostility to thrive in spaces meant to be safe for everyone." Michelle paused, scanning the room. "I could have argued. I could have shouted. But I've learned that strength isn't about how loud you are, it's about how steady you stand. Grace under pressure isn't just a personal trait, it's a powerful tool. And it's one we all need to embrace if we're going to dismantle the injustices that persist around us." Her speech didn't stop at her own experience. Michelle used it as a springboard to call for systemic change. She urged institutions to take a closer look at their policies, ensuring that they didn't just react to discrimination but actively work to prevent it. "To the airline that apologized, I say thank you, but now the work begins. To the passengers who stood silent, I say this, your voice matters. And to everyone listening today, remember this, it's not enough to condemn racism privately. We must challenge it publicly, collectively, and with unwavering determination." Her words resonated deeply, drawing a standing ovation. But Michelle wasn't interested in applause, she was focused on inspiring action. As the event concluded, Michelle released a statement on her social media platforms. It read, "This experience reminded me of the power of standing firm in the face of injustice. But it also reminded me of how much work we still have to do. Change doesn't happen overnight, it happens when we stand together, when we demand better, and when we refuse to back down. Let's keep moving forward. Together." The message went viral, sparking conversations worldwide. Michelle's call for grace, strength, and collective action served as a powerful reminder of the change that was possible when people united against bias and stood for justice. Her story wasn't just about what happened on that flight, it became a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of resilience, and a rallying cry for a better, more equitable future.